I'm not a comedian. I did stand up when I was a kid. It was awful. I wasn't even a very great improv comic, like doing improv shows. Like not a funny guy. I'm a storyteller. I'm a character guy. I'm a dialogue person. I can write clever dialogue that is funny, but that's different from being like a humorist.
Rick and Morty is about to get back to the big story, and if you're a fan of the show, you're aware that's probably a good thing. In episode 5, Rick is going to get back to the business at hand, which of course is hunting down his nemesis, Rick Prime. But it's this return to the big story that should have longtime fans at least somewhat excited, as so far, Season 7 hasn't done much to move that narrative forward since the Season 6 finale, when Rick vowed to hunt down this version of himself and make him pay for killing his wife and daughter back in his original universe. This marks a return to the long-running storyline that Rick and Morty writers have woven into the wacky story from the beginning, but only periodically return back to, as much of the series spends its time in fun, zany, one-off adventures that take Rick and Morty to all corners of the multiverse. Or at least this carefully curated version of the multiverse where Rick always comes out on top. But I digress. Anyway, I spoke with Rick and Morty co-creator Dan Harmon and executive producer Scott Marder, who say they never gave up on that big story going on in the background. Can you talk even vaguely about some of the things that Rick is going to be dealing with as a character as he moves through this episode and deals with this?
Season 7 is certainly about Rick really engaging with this revenge story that's been going on behind the scenes this whole time. We wanted to make it clear to the fans that we are interested in those stories too, and that we're not like giving up on them, that we're keeping our eye on the ball, and that those things are going to continue moving on in the background, but we still generally want to tell the type of stories that we've been telling, that have been bringing them in season by season as it is.
I like to tell stories. I like to imagine each episode. I'm still from the school of television where everything has to be modular, and it doesn't matter if you're on your 50th episode of Mork and Mindy. There's still a part of your job as a writer to assume, even theoretically, that someone might have no idea what the plot of Mork and Mindy is in general. I don't think I'd be doing people a service by becoming a soap opera writer so late in the game. I'd write a bad one.
Nanu. Anyway, the way Rick and Morty balances its weird one-off adventures with its heavier episodes chock full of canonical lore is part of what has made the show so successful. For example, in Season 3, when Rick destabilizes the currency and economy of the Citadel and leaves it to crumble, 2 episodes later we got perhaps the greatest one-off ever. Pickle Rick.
I'm Pickle Rick!
And since the canon episodes typically deal with the more heartbreaking elements of Rick's existence, Harmon says it's all about juxtaposing those stories with the one-offs that bring out the best in both. Dan, as a writer, do you have a preference between those kind of one-offs and the bigger story stuff, or is it all the same to you?
Definitely not all the same. The canonical stuff is very difficult. You're serving, there's a thing there that you can hurt. This guy is tragically alone. No amount of superiority is ever gonna make him happy, etc. I mean, those are really dark themes that belong in like a Jackson Pollock biopic. All the funnier that they should be presented in a cartoon about a mad scientist. I like the 20-minute stories with a beginning, middle, and an end that almost feel like a speed run of a Doctor Who miniseries or just a feature film. You know, I'll always like those. They're whatever disaster you create or triumph, it's contained to that episode, and you get to move on. Comedy and darkness, like drama or whatever you want to call it, tragedy, they have to go hand in hand if you want to do one really well. That's why I always cheat in any show that I've ever done, because I can't beat Tina Fey at a Tina Fey contest. You know, I'm not going to be Always Sunny at an Always Sunny contest. I always cheat and go for the feeling bone. It's to make up for to amplify the funny bone that you tickle. So yeah, the darkness has to be there. You have to write what you know, make it an autobiography.
Rick, are you in a relationship with the population of Virginia?
We dated.
Case in point, in Season 7, Episode 3, Air Force Wong, the show subtly touches on Rick's hunt of Rick Prime when Unity, The hive mind, who likes to bang Rick sometimes, shows up to let him know she heard about his quest and that it might be a pretty self-destructive thing for him to keep going on with it.
And we've been looking for a little bit of linkage to kind of help tie some aspects of this season together. And we're like, it'd be really cool if just out in the universe, she caught wind that her ex was kind of back on drugs again, back on, kind of messing around again in a way that worried her. But she didn't know exactly where to find him. So she found a way back to Earth just to be like, I'm worried about you. This behavior is kind of reckless. Even though we're not together, I don't want to see you get hurt. Felt like a cool way just to kind of remind fans, like, we haven't lost sight of the big picture, but hopefully you'll still enjoy this generally standalone episode. So it was certainly an intentional just sort of springboard to what's coming.
Okay, quick break, but when we come back, there's a dark theory about an item in Rick's garage. Dan and Scott tell us what they know about it. Stick around and we'll get to the bottom of it. Be right back. So while we're on the topic of Rick and Morty's darkly tragic nature, how about this fan theory that goes all the way back to the beginning of the series? It all centers around this helmet in Rick's garage. According to the theory, the helmet was meant to be some sort of suicide helmet that Rick would use to unalive himself at the end of the series. And there's some supporting evidence of all of this, including a photo of this helmet from real life that allegedly was built for the same purpose. But here's the thing, they finally used that helmet.
I'm gonna put my mind in your brain and your mind in my brain. Then we'll see the real definition of waste, Jerry.
It was a mind swapper, which Rick uses with Morty's loser dad Jerry, but once they use it, Rick immediately does this.
Wait, no!
So not a suicide helmet exactly, just kind of. We asked if this was intentional, and the answer was a resounding maybe?
I've been watching this show since the beginning. A theory that I had been following was one regarding the helmet in Rick's garage. The one that he eventually used to swap minds with Jerry. I was wondering if you were aware of the theory. The theory was that helmet was a suicide helmet. But we found out in the last episode it wasn't. But a suicide happened just after that anyway. I was wondering, was that intentional? Were you guys aware of that theory at all? Is that just something that just is purely coincidence?
That sounds like the kind of thing that I would love to pretend is intentional, but it certainly wasn't on my end. However, there are lots of things that the artists do that are fully intentional that they don't even share with us, like using a prop or a part of a prop to generate. So if that's what this is about, then credit should go to the artists for that Easter egg, right, Scott? I don't know.
I guarantee a writer and or someone on the crew were aware of that theory and presented that as kind of a wink. Yeah, it wouldn't be shocking to me if that helmet had the intention of being a suicide helmet and got repurposed for brain swapping in that episode.
Thanks for watching, and for more Rick and Morty, here's a refresh on that whole Rick Prime Nemesis situation, so check that out, and don't forget to follow and subscribe to IGN wherever you like to watch.